Okay. So we are starting from 5 lines from the bottom. Tanya Idach. Ches Omud Sheni. Today's daf is daf tes. So I love these sheets, the outline of these type of, if you see my screen, it just gives it to you very simply what you just learned so far. As a review, we learned in our Mishnah on the 1st of Tishrei starts Yovel. The Jubilee year starts on the 1st of Tishrei. So the Gemara said that this only coincides with the opinion of Rabbi Yishmael ben Rabbi Yochanan ben Broika, because he holds that Yovel starts on Rosh Hashana. And at that point, the slaves don't work, but they don't go free yet. They really go free on Yom Kippur. So what do? If you have a Jewish slave, he sits around the house like a yeshiva bacha with a crown on his head, and he's eating, and he doesn't have to work. Okay, Sheldon just walked. Hi, Sheldon. We just began. Hi. We just began. Yeah, we just began. I'm just going over the Gemara. So the Gemara said, the Mishnah said that on the 1st of Tishrei is Rosh Hashana for a Yovel. And we said that Yovel, our Mishnah that says that Yovel begins on the 1st of Tishrei, goes according to the opinion of Rabbi Shmuel, the son of Rabbi Yochanan ben Broika, who said that on Rosh Hashana, Yovel begins. The slaves don't go free till Yom Kippur, till you blow the shofar. But up until that point, the Rabbi Yochanan ben Broika said that the slaves sit around the house and you're not allowed to work with them. You have to feed them. And then on the 10th of Tishrei, you blow the shofar and they go free. The Chachamim said, no, Yom Kippur is the time they go free. That means Yom Kippur starts Yovel. Yovel does not start on Rosh Hashana. You're allowed to work the land on Rosh Hashana till Yom Kippur. You're allowed to work the land. But on Yom Kippur starts Yovel. The Jubilee year starts on Yom Kippur. So our Mishnah goes according to who? Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Shmuel, ben Rosh, Rabbi Yochanan ben Broika. So let's go back into the Gemara. Ches Omud Sheni, 5 lines from the bottom. Tanya Idach, we learned in another brisa. It says in the pasuk Yovel Hi. Let's just call up the pasuk. The pasuk says over here, right here at the bottom. First of all, I just want to read the pasuk, so it's very easy. First, you have to blow the shofar on the 10th of the month in Yom Kippur, and what happens? This is the pasuk on the Liberty Bell. V'kidashtem eis chamish shnasa chamishim shana. The 50th year is holy. Ukrosim drar, you proclaim freedom in the land, l'chol yoshvel, to all its inhabitants. Yovel hi, that's the key word. Yovel hi, it is Yovel. Tilechem, and the Torah said, v'shaftem ish el achuzasai. Everybody, v'ish el mishpachtoi tashuvu. Everybody goes back to his land, even if he sold it, he gets it back, and you go back home. And then the Torah says, although it's Yovel, it's the 50th year, you're not allowed to plant, and you're not allowed to, it's like a Shemitah year. But according to Chachamim, it actually starts Yom Kippur. According to Rabbi Shmuel ben Rosh, Rabbi Yochanan ben Broika, actually it also starts on Yom Kippur. Listen closely. But there's a Haisofa. In other words, it starts on Yom Kippur, but you're supposed to make an addition and extend it a little bit. Just like Shabbos doesn't start at night. You start Shabbos Friday late afternoon after sunset. So also, according to Reb Shmuel, it actually started on Yom Kippur, but you're supposed to extend it a little bit early. So now we can understand the Gemara. Yovel hi. So ma tamad loimer. What is the pasuk teaching you? It's Yovel. Already told you. It told you it's the 50th year. What does it mean, Yovel hi? Because the pasuk says the 50th year is entirely holy, right? Yochal. Just like you extended the Kedusha, according to Rabbi Yishmael, you extended the Kedusha from Yom Kippur all the way back to Rosh Hashana, that it has a start from Rosh Hashana, although the slaves don't go free to Yom Kippur, it's in an extension. I might think that Yovel extends into the 8th year, till next year Yom Kippur, till like the 51st year in Yom Kippur. Because they extended in the beginning, it should extend in the end. Baltitama, don't worry, don't go be shocked by such a preposterous idea. You're adding already something weekday to the holy days. We do that. We find that in every Shabbos. You add a little bit on Friday afternoon, you call it Shabbos, even though Shabbos does not start till when it's dark. So I would think that Yovel extends into the 51st year. Talmud Loima, so the Pasuk says what? Yovel hi, Shnasa Chamishim. It's the Yovel hi is the 50th year. Shnasa Chamishim at the Mekadesh, Yat Mekadesh Shnasa Chamishim Ba'achas. The 50th year is holy, but not the 51st year. So this is Rabbi Shmuel ben Oisha, Rabbi Yochanan ben Broika. So the Gemara, now we go to Taf Testament Aleph. So the Gemara asks, Rabbanim. Rabbanim never saw an extension in Yovel. Yovel never starts from Rosh Hashana. Yovel really starts from when? Yom Kippur. So what do they do with the Yovel He? What is that teaching you? It's because I couldn't have a Havamina that you extend the Yovel because you're not extending it in the 50th year itself. So what do they do with the word He? So the Gemara says, Shnasach, the Rabbanim will use that pasuk to teach you Shnasach Hamishim Atamoina, Bi'atamoina Shnasach Hamishim Ba'achas. The Yovel year is a funny year. It's a 50th year, but now when you start the next counting of 50 years, you have to start from 1. And the Yovel is not counted as the 50th year and the first year of the next cycle. La Puke to Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says now, Omar, he said Shnasach Hamishim, the 50th year. Oila ulkan goes for both. It goes for it counts as the previous 50, and it's the number 1 of the following 50. So that is a very big opinion. And it's a very important machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and the other Chachamim, whether the 50th year is included in the cycle or it's separate from the cycle. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, it's counted as a double year. It's the 50th year from the previous cycle and the first year of the next cycle. So we don't
they stop planting on the they don't plant the 49th nor the 50th, right?
Yes, but
it's already 2 years, and then they theoretically could lose another year because it wasn't the first year because wow.
Yeah, but here we're talking about, let's say 100 years, right? So by the 50th year is Yovel. Agree? 49th year was Shemitah. Year number 50 is Yovel. Let's go, according to Rabbi Yehuda, year 99 is the next, year 98 is the next Shemitah, and year 99 is Yovel. You could have this massive machlokes when Shemitah is and when Yovel is. The whole counting is messed up. According to Rabbi Yehuda, if the 50th year is counted as the Yovel plus the next cycle, so then year 99 is Yovel. It keeps
getting one less as you keep going
on.
Yeah.
Right. So the whole counting is messed up. But according to Chachamim, no. Shnas Chamishim Atamoina. The 50th year is counted individually, but Shnas Chamishim, you don't count it as if as if it's the 51st year. It means the first year of the next cycle. So so you could see how there was big machlokes of what was Shemitah, what was Yovel throughout the ages. Nu Gemara. We touched on a point before that whenever there's a holy day, let's say Shabbos or Yom Kippur, Yom Tiv, whatever, you always extend the holiness a little bit early. You start earlier. How do you know that? U'demaisifin, you're supposed to add on Michoil from weekday ala kodesh on something holy. Minolan, how do you know that idea? So the Torah says, the Tanya we learned in the Brisa, the Torah says, Sheisus Yomim Tavoid. You have to work for 6 days, and 7th day you rest, don't do any work. And then the Torah singles out Becharish, plowing, Ubekatzir, reaping, Tishbais, you should stop working on Shabbos. Well, it already told you that you're not supposed to work on Shabbos. Don't do any work on Shabbos. So why does it single out these? So we have a concept called that Torah, if it's not needed in its place, it's needed somewhere else. It must be talking about another topic. It's not talking about a regular Shabbos. It's talking about Shemitah. And what the Torah is going to tell you that you have to stop chorish, plowing, or cutting, reaping, even on Shemitah. What does that mean? Rabbi Kiva Omer. Rabbi Kiva says, "Ein it tzarich loimer." We don't have to tell you choretz v'katzir shashvius that you're not allowed to plow and you're not allowed to reap if you plant on anything on Shemitah. If it grows in your field on Shemitah, you're not allowed to plow your field. You're not allowed to cut. You're not allowed to plant your field on Shemitah. Ella, this pasuk is teaching you another din in Shemitah that you would not know. What does that mean? chorishal ever shvius anichnas l'shvius, that the plowing of Erev Shvius, the eve of Shemitah, let's say this year Shemitah started on Rosh Hashana, right? So let's say already a little bit earlier, you weren't allowed to plow. You're now allowed to plow. You're now allowed to plow your fruit trees. Let's say you're not allowed to plow on Erev Shemitah because it's going to benefit on Shemitah itself. So not only you're not allowed to plow on Shemitah, but even let's say on Rosh Chodesh Elul, you're not allowed to plant you're not allowed to plant, you're not allowed to plow on Shemitah. And and let's say somehow it grew by itself. Plants do grow by itself. So on Shemitah it grew. Even though you didn't plant, something grew on your field, and it grew a third. So then when Motzei Shvius comes out, the 8th year, you have to treat not only the produce as Shemitah produce, even though you're picking it in the 8th year, but also even in the 8th year, you're not allowed to work around that land. You're not allowed to plow around the land that's holding Shvius produce. So we see we're extending Shemitah not just in the Shemitah year, the 7th year, but we're extending it into the Erev Shvius, the 6th year, and we're extending it after Shemitah into the 8th year. And that's what this pasuk is teaching you, that you have to stop plowing and cutting when? Even in the 6th year and in the 8th year. So we see from there a source that you're supposed to add from weekdays to holy days. Something holy, you have to add a little bit to it. Rabbi Shmuel disagrees. He says, we have another drasha from Becharish, Bekatza Tishbais. Me Charish Rishis. Just like plowing, we never find a mitzvah in the Torah to plow for a mitzvah. There's no mitzvah in the Torah to plow. But, so therefore, the Torah says you should abstain from plowing. Af kotzir rishus. He holds that the Torah only forbade you for cutting and reaping on Shabbos if it's not a mitzvah. Yotza, the Torah gives you an exception, an exclusion, that even on Shabbos you're allowed to cut. Ktsir ha'omer, the cutting of the omer, which is a mincha brought on with barley on the first day of Chol Hamoed Sukkos, right? Shuhu mitzvah, the mitzvah was that you're supposed to cut it, and now you're supposed to cut it the night before. And if that night was Friday night, the mitzvah is, according to Shmuel, to cut it and bring it as a mincha the next day or that day. So they used to cut it at the night and bring it as a mincha the next day. Well, the mitzvah is to cut it, even if that omer came out on Friday night, even if, like, say, the Chol Hamoed first day Chol Hamoed Sukkos is on a Shabbos, you would still do cut, even though cutting on Shabbos is not permitted, but cutting the omer is permitted. According to Rabbi Akiva, by the way, you should cut the omer prepared from before Shabbos. You don't have to cut it on the same day. Rabbi Shmuel holds you have to cut it on the same day. So according to Rabbi Shmuel, you don't really have a source that you're supposed to extend from a holy day to a weekday. So the Gemara asked the question, Rabbi Shmuel, where do you know you're supposed to extend from a holy day to a weekday? He doesn't have the pasuk, the Becharish Bekatza Tishbais. It's teaching you something else, that you're allowed to cut the omer. Nafkele b'Tanya, we learned it from a Baraisa. The pasuk says like this. Let's bring up the pasuk so it's clear. The pasuk says, the Torah talks about you have to Yom Kippur, you're supposed to fast. And then the Torah says, Shabbos lechem, it's a Yom Kippur, you're supposed to not do work. And what does the Torah say? You should put yourself at stress by not eating. On the 9th day of Tishrei, be'erev, at night. Now, me'erev, from one night ad erev to the other night, tishpesu shabbatchem, you should abstain. You should have your Shabbos. You should abstain from everything. Now, this pasuk b'sisha tells you you're supposed to fast on the 9th day, not on the 10th day. And then the Torah says, be'erev, the night after the 9th day. So how do you reconcile that pasuk? It says the pasuk, back into the Gemara. I might think that you're supposed to fast on the 9th day. Torah says you're supposed to fast that night. If the Torah says you're supposed to fast that night, that you should only start fasting when it gets dark outside, because be'erev means when it gets dark. The pasuk says that you're supposed to start fasting on the 9th day. So are you supposed to fast on the 9th day or only on the 10th? How can you reconcile? You start your fast a little bit early. Malame, this comes to teach you. You're supposed to extend from the holy day to the weekday, and the holy day is Yom Kippur. Start the fast early, and now you're supposed to start your fast early. Eli, so the Gemara says, I only know when you're supposed to start Yom Kippur early. How do you know you're supposed to extend Yom Kippur a little bit after dark? Talmud Loimer, may Erev, from the night, ad Erev, until the night, ad va'ad b'chlal, means including starting of the Motzei Yom Kippur night, you should still be fasting. So that's where the Torah says you extend the Yom Kippur, not just the 10th day, a little bit on the 9th, and a little bit on the 11th. Yom Kippur. I only see this source as Yom Kippur. Shabbos Soismanayim. How do you know you're supposed to start Shabbos early? Talmud Loimer, there's an extra word there, Tishbesu, that you should abstain. You should follow these directions even on Shabbos. Start Shabbos a little bit Friday after, a little bit earlier than dark. On Friday a little bit, and extend it a little bit after Motzei Shabbos. Yom Tovim Minayim. How do you know you include Yom Tiv? Talmud Loimer Shabbatchem. HaKetzad. Anytime there is an abstention, he's not supposed to work. Yom Tov, Shabbos, Shemitah, Moisifin, you're supposed to add Mechoil ala Kodesh, a little bit on the weekday to the holy day. So that is the source of Rabbi Yishmael. So now Rabbi Kiva has this extra pasuk, because Rabbi Kiva's source that you Moisif Mechoil ala Kodesh is Chorish v'Kotze Tishbois. So now the Gemara asks back the final question. What does Rabbi Akiva do with this pasuk, the inisim as nafsher seichem? So we saw this quite a few times in Masechta Yoma. That means, Hai vadisim nafsher seichem shisha my ovid. Like, what does Rabbi Akiva do with that banisim nafsher seichem? That you're supposed to fast on the 9th day. You need it. L'katoni chia barav midiftei. Chia barav from diftei explained. The toni chia barav midiftei. Banisim as nafsher seichem. You should fast on the 9th day. And do you really fast on the 9th day? You're supposed to fast on the 10th day, because the Torah says ba'erev, at the night, and the Torah says earlier also that on the 10th day is the fast of Yom Kippur. So why does the Torah say fast on the 9th day? To teach you, if you eat a lot, if you eat and drink a lot on the 9th day, and Rashi says if you called the mapish b'achila v'shtiyah tfei odev, the more you eat and drink, the better off you are, because mala olav hakosov, the Torah counts it. We go to chesam sheni ki ilis ana chivasi, as if you had a fast on the 9th and the 10th day. So this idea of that the Hashem wanted you to eat on the 9th day and on the 10th day. And we spoke out a number of reasons. Why would the Torah require you and make it a mitzvah to eat on the 9th day? Pashut, you can say that the Torah wants you to be satiated and happy on the 9th day, full, not to put yourself at risk when you're going to fast on the 10th day. But there's something more deeper than that, in that we learned, I think one of the Mefarshim explained that when you eat heavily the day before a fast, it makes the fast even harder. So the idea of eating more on the 9th is that makes the fast even more stressful. And that is part of that mitzvah for the fast. As you're preparing to make the fast more stressful, the Torah considered as if you fasted on the 9th and the 10th day. One thing we did speak about is that suppose somebody's sick and is not going to fast on the 10th day, does he have that mitzvah to eat on the 9th day? That was one question we asked. Then we also spoke out a very interesting question. Let's say a guy came home from work on the 9th day. Now we just learned there's a mitzvah to eat on the 9th day, but there's also a mitzvah to eat to start the fast early. So let's say the person didn't eat at all on the 9th day. He wasn't mekayim the mitzvah to eat on the 9th day. Now the first time he gets off the LIRR train and he gets home, and now it's already after sunset, but it's not yet dark. So he has two mitzvahs. One mitzvah is it's still the 9th day. You're supposed to eat. Another mitzvah is moisifim mechoil ala kodesh. You're supposed to add from the weekday. You're supposed to start your fast early. So which would override which? A very interesting question. Okay, one more point. Also, by the way, there's another question: is women are mechuyev to eat on the 9th day? Because this is one of those mitzvahs that women were very meticulous to eat on the 9th day. It's a rare mitzvah asay that's shazman grama that chayev, because since it's intertwined with fasting on the 10th day, therefore even women are chayev in this mitzvah. That's why we learned. I think we learned this in Beya, and that the women used to eat even right up until dark. And it was we say, don't tell them, really they're not supposed to eat up until dark, but we say mutif because they're never going to listen to us. They were women that we used to eat all the way straight through till it was dark outside. Because why did women do that? Because this was a rare mitzvah to say that they had, that they wanted to be Mekayim, and therefore they were meticulous to even eat even after sunset. That's what we discussed in Masechta Beya. Okay, Taner Rabbanan. I one last point, because there's a lot to say on this. One last point is that one of the reasons why a person does Aveira is for two reasons. Either he overate, and he feels v'ram levavecha, his heart feels superior or haughty, or you're under stress. So the way to do tshuva is not to do averos when you're in those types of situations. That's why you eat a lot Erev Yom Kippur and not sin, and then you put yourself in stressful state of mind by fasting Yom Kippur. So you accomplish both, and you're not sin. That's the ultimate tshuva. Torah Rabbanan, rabbis taught yovel he. It says in the pasuk yovel he. Now, yovel he means that yovel starts automatically. Alpha pishloi shamtu, alpha pishloi taku. We know the mitzvah of yovel includes about 3 or 4 mitzvahs. One of the mitzvahs is that you're supposed to blow the shofar. One mitzvah is that you have to free slaves. One mitzvah is that you have to return. Everybody gets their karka back. So unlike Shemitah, you would think that Shemitah starts right away. You don't have to think about it. Yovel is very dependent. The mitzvah of Yovel, to call it Yovel, is dependent if the Jews are following the mitzvahs of the Torah. So first, the Brisa says, Yovel starts automatically, even if nobody went back and got their land back. If most of the Jews decided not to give the land back to the original owners, it's still considered Yovel. Even if nobody blew the shofar on Yom Kippur, it's still called Yovel, even if nobody's from. I might think, if most Jews did not free their slaves, I might think you have Yovel. He means you make it into Yovel. It's limited. Yovel is not automatically. If most of the Jews are not freeing their slaves, it's not called Yovel that year. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. So the main thing is freeing the slaves, according to Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yossi Yovel he, alpha pishlei shamtu, alpha pishlei shalchu. He says that Yovel, even if you didn't return the land, even if the owners didn't get back their land, alpha pishlei shalchu, it's Yovel automatically. Even if nobody sent their slaves away and they decided to keep their slaves, it's still considered Yovel. Yochel, I might think alpha pishlei taku. That means even if you didn't blow, right? If nobody blew the shofar, Talmud Lemehi, that Yovel is dependent on blowing the shofar. Only when you blow the shofar, then you have the issa of not to work the land. Otherwise, if Bezdin or whatever didn't blow the shofar, then there's no Yovel, it's no kedusha that year. That's a fascinating thing, that we create the Yovel. And the pasuk, the Rabbi Yossi explains, there's one pasuk Yovel that says Yovel is automatic, and one pasuk limits it and says Yovel is dependent on what the Jews do. So why do I make it dependent on blowing the shofar? Rabbi Yossi is explaining his opinion. Why am I making it dependent only if you blow the shofar? Why? Because sometimes the answer is it's possible to have a situation where no Jews had slaves to free. Nobody bought a Jewish slave that year. That year didn't have a Jewish slave. So therefore, you can't make Yovel dependent on something that's possibly cannot happen. It's impossible that there's no blowing of the shofar. So there must be a shofar. So therefore, the dependent, what makes yovel? Blowing the shofar. Davar acha, another pshat, zu mesur lebezdin, zu any mesur bezdin. Shofar is Bezdin supposed to blow the shofar, even though everybody else, but mainly Bezdin starts blowing the shofar, and therefore it's definitely going to happen. But this shluach avodim, sending home slaves, it's not. It's up to the individual. So we can't make yovel determined by individuals. It must be determined what Bezdin does. My dava acha, why did you give me two reasons? You gave me one reason over here, Mesur lebezdin, and you gave me another reason. It was impossible to have nobody have a slave, because yes, if you want to say it's impossible that no Jew in the whole world did not have a slave. Because remember, slaves is not just in Israel. I could have a Jewish slave here in New York. So there must be a Jew somewhere that had a slave. So it's impossible to say that there's no Jews that have slaves. So you could make yovel dependent on freeing the slaves. But the answer is zu mesur lebezdin, zu any mesur lebezdin. That's why we give you the second reason. That the reason is because the shofar is given over to Bezdin, and that's for sure going to happen. And if Bezdin does it, and this is not given over to Bezdin, it's the individual if he wants to free a slave. So therefore, Rabbi Yossi explained this reason why. What determines yovel? Determines yovel is shofar. So the Gemara asks, Bishla, but Rabbi Yossi could go my time. Rabbi Yossi gave a clear reason why yovel is dependent on shofar. El Rabbi Yehuda, my timer. What's the reason? What Rabbi Yehuda says? Why does he say yovel is dependent if all Jews, most Jews, I guess, free their slaves? How did you know that? So the Amakra, because Rabbi Yehuda had a pasuk. Let's see the pasuk clearly. The pasuk says, right over here, ukros 50th year, ukrosim drar ba'aretz l'chol yishveh. You declare freedom to the entire people. Yovel he, that makes yovel, and then everybody gets their land back, and everybody goes home. So Rabbi Yehuda says, Amakra krosim drar. Ba'aretz, you proclaim freedom in the land. That means the people go home. The slaves get free. And the pasuk says, Yovel he, that determines Yovel. V'ksavar, mikra nidr shlefonav, v'loy lefnei fonav. Rabbi Yehuda says, determination of what Yovel he is what it says right before it. Right before it says Yovel he, it says free the slaves. And not something over here of shofar, which is a pasuk behind that, blow the shofar. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, since freeing of the slaves is right next to the word yovel he, that makes yovel. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, that's what makes yovel, freeing of the slave. And afterwards, the ishal mechuzasa is following that people get their land back. That's after the words yovel he. So that also doesn't determine what yovel is. So migdash didl fun of leifnei fun. So now the Gemara says, and not afterwards either. The Kuli Alma, everybody heard. Now the Gemara just cleans up over here. The Kuli Alma drar lashon cheres. We said krosim drar. The word drar means go free. What does that mean? My mashma. The Tanya we learned in a brisa ain drar el lashon cheres. The word drar means cheres. What does the word drar mean? Cheres, because drar means you can live everywhere, like dira. Rav Yehuda, my lashon drar, kimedaya be dayara umayvel schar b'chol medina. You can live wherever you want and bring your possessions wherever in any country you want. Dira, you can have you can live. You're free to live everywhere. So that krosim drar means to be free. So we have two shitas, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yehuda says it's to shluach abadim. Rabbi Yossi says tkiyah shofar. That determines yovel. All three of them determine yovel. You have to do all three. You have to blow the shofar, you have to free slaves, and everybody has to get their property back. Because they hold mikra nidrish lefonav lefnei fonav ul'achrav. The pasuk is darshan before and prior to that and afterwards. Yovel is determined by all three things that I mentioned in the pasuk. Like I said, shofar, freeing the slaves, then yovel he, and also ishal chazasai, because yovel goes on everything. You have to do everything, and then it becomes yovel, and then you cannot work the land. So now the question is, the hawk siv yovel, but the Torah says yovel comes by itself. there's a pasuk yovel, an extra word that yovel is automatic. So how does Rabbanan Chachamim deal with that? That teaches you that freeing of the slaves also apply in Chutz La'aretz. That means even if you have a slave, you have to free him. Even if New York, if you have a slave, when it comes yovel, you have to free him, even in Chutz La'aretz, because but doesn't the pasuk says that you're supposed to free the slaves, those that are living in Eretz Yisrael? Could be if you own a slave in New York, you don't have to free it, because look at this pasuk, ukrosim drar ba'aretz, the proclaim freed of the slaves ba'aretz, only in Eretz Yisrael. So the Gemara says no. When people are freeing the slaves in Israel, that means most Jews live in Israel, and then noyeg b'chutz la'aretz. Then yovel applies in chutz la'aretz. Bisman she'eina noyeg ba'aretz. But if you don't have freeing of the slaves in Eretz Yisrael, eina noyeg b'chutz la'aretz. It's not. You don't have that freeing. You don't have yovel in chutz la'aretz. So you have to have people living in Israel in order to have a yovel. So again, we have three-way machlokes. So what determines yovel? But either according to Chacham, everything, freeing the slaves, everybody has to blow the shofar and everybody has to return the property. And according to Rabbi Yossi, it is the blowing of the shofar. According to Rabbi Yehuda, it's the freeing of the slave. One more quick piece of Gemara. Ulnanatia. The Gemara's Mishnah says you're supposed to for Arla. Rosh Hashana for Arla is Tishrei. So if you plant, let's say Echad Be'elul, it comes the first of Tishrei, that's the second year. By the third year, again, but by Arla, the first 3 years, you're not allowed to benefit, you're not allowed to eat the fruits. And the fourth year, you have to gather the fruits of the tree and bring it up to Yerushalayim and eat it like Ma'aser Sheni. So how do you know that the Rosh Hashanah for Arla is Tishrei? Minolan, how do you know that? The ksiv, because the pasuk says, shalosh, when you plant the tree, shalosh shanim arelim. 3 years, you're not allowed to eat the fruits of the tree. Uksiv, but the pasuk says, uvashana harvi'is, but on the fourth year, I want you to take the fruits of the tree and bring it up to Yerushalayim and eat it there. Now, it says shana, uvashana harvi'is. Yala shana shana mitishrei. We have Gzeira Shava, shana shana mitishrei. Same word. Ksiv, it says in the pasuk, Moreshis Hashana. That from the beginning of the year, God determines what's going to be at the end, the whole year. That Hashana refers to Tishrei. So the shana that refers to Arla and by the tree, it also refers to Tishrei. So the Gemara asks the same question. Let us learn Gzeira Shava, shana from the month of Nisan. The Ksiv pasuk says, Rishon hu lechem l'chotshei Hashana. That Nisan is the first of the months of the year, and there it says Shana, referring to Nisan. That is the first, the Chodesh Nisan, when we left Mitzrayim. So the Gemara says, when you're making a Gzeira Shava, you try to make it as similar as possible, and therefore, Don and Shana Sheni Mechadashim, Shana Sheni Mechadashim. I learned the word of Shana, which doesn't have the word Chadashim next to it, from another word of Shana that doesn't have Chadashim next to it. Shana Ravias to Mereshis Hashana. But the ain't done a Shana Shem Mechadashim, Shana Sheyeshim Mechadashim. But I do not learn Shana Ravias to Chotshei Hashana, because there it says the word Chotshei next to the word Shana, so it's a little less similar than the word by Arla. So I'd rather learn the Gzeira Shava to Rosh Hashanah because it's more similar with Shana without any additives to it. So therefore, it's a more pure Gzeira Shava, and from there we know that the Rosh Hashanah for a tree is Tishrei. Okay, we're going to continue that topic, Bez Hashem, tomorrow.
Bernard, just a quick question. The land acquisition, I know this, if you have a slave outside of Eretz Yisrael, you have to let the Jewish slave go. But that has to do with also land outside of Eretz Yisrael?
No, of course not, because the V'shaftem ish el achuzosai. Achuzosai is your inheritance you got from your shevet or whatever. That's the family property.
So today in Israel, if you're close to Yovel, that would affect a lot of buying and selling of properties.
Right. We don't have Yovel for this reason, because again, we don't have Yovel because nobody has slaves. And in order to make a Yovel, you have to have slaves, and you have to have...
So therefore the conditions, those condition of 3 have to exist. Otherwise there would be very difficulty selling and buying property if you didn't have slaves.
That's correct. So that's why it's not. There's no yovel bisman hazeh. I don't think you would be able to determine what yovel is.
I don't
Right,
think they
right.
actually know when Yovel is anymore.
Right.
Right. Okay, great.
Okay,
Thank
very
you.
good.
It's good.
Okay.
Thank
Good
you.
night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye.
Baruch.